Pay attention to the woman with the bright yellow backpack. Her name is Jennifer Hayes, 22 years old, recent graduate from Ohio State University with a degree in graphic design. She's walking through the parking lot of a community college in Reynoldsburg, Ohio. It's 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in October. She's on her way to what she believes is a freelance consulting meeting. A local startup needs branding work. The pay is good, $800 for an initial consultation and mock-ups. Jennifer needs the money. Student loans don't pay themselves. Now, pay attention to the man approaching from the left side of the frame. He's wearing khaki pants and a blue button-down shirt. Professional, unthreatening. He's carrying a leather portfolio under his arm. He smiles. He extends his hand. Jennifer shakes it. Within 3 hours, her phone would be turned off forever. This was not a consulting meeting. It was a carefully planned abduction. Jennifer Hayes wasn't supposed to be worried about money. She'd done everything right. 4 years of college, graduated with honors, built a portfolio of work that impressed her professors. But the job market in 2019 was brutal for creatives. She'd sent out 47 applications in 3 months, 12 interviews, 0 offers. The freelance posting had appeared on a design forum she frequented. Clean, professional, detailed. The client, a man named Michael Brennan, represented a tech startup called Vision Path Solutions. They needed an identity system, logo, color palette, typography, the works. He'd sent samples of competitor brands he admired. He'd asked intelligent questions about her process. Everything felt legitimate. Jennifer had researched the company. The website looked professional, clean design, compelling copy about helping small businesses optimize their digital presence. There were testimonials from satisfied clients. A physical address, 847 Industrial Parkway, Suite 12, Reynoldsburg. She had no way of knowing every word was fabricated. The meeting location was unusual, but not alarming. Michael Brennan explained that VisionPath was in transition, moving from a shared workspace to their own office. For now, he worked from a converted garage space at an industrial facility. "It's not fancy," he'd written in his email, "but it's quiet and we can spread out the materials." Jennifer arrived at 2:45 p.m. The industrial park was half empty, several units clearly vacant. She found Unit 12. The garage door was closed, but a regular door stood beside it. She knocked. Michael Brennan opened the door. Mid-30s, Nigerian accent, well-dressed, warm smile. "Jennifer, thank you so much for coming. Please, come in." The space looked exactly as advertised. A converted garage with a small office setup. Desk, computer, printer, filing cabinets. Design books on a shelf. A portfolio of work spread on a table. Everything calculated to create trust. Jennifer stepped inside. Michael closed the door behind her. She heard the lock click. By 6 p.m., Jennifer's roommate, Alicia Porter, knew something was wrong. Jennifer always texted when a meeting ran long. Always. They had plans to cook dinner together. Jennifer had even prepped ingredients that morning. Chicken marinating in the fridge, vegetables chopped, and waiting. At 6:15 p.m., Alicia called Jennifer's phone, straight to voicemail. She called again. Same result. At 6:45 p.m., Alicia called Jennifer's mother in Cincinnati. Linda Hayes hadn't heard from her daughter since that morning. Jennifer had texted her before leaving for the meeting. "Wish me luck. This could be my big break." By 7:30 p.m., Linda Hayes was in her car driving to Columbus. By 8 p.m., Alicia was calling the Reynoldsburg Police Department. Officer Marcus Webb took the initial report. A young woman, missing approximately 5 hours, last known to be meeting a client at an industrial park. The client's name, Michael Brennan. The company, Vision Path Solutions. The address, 847 Industrial Parkway, Suite 12. Webb drove to the location immediately. He arrived at 8:47 p.m. The industrial park was dark. Most units closed for the night. He found Unit 12. The lights were off. He knocked. No answer. He walked the perimeter. The garage had no windows. A single door, locked. No vehicles in the immediate vicinity. No signs of disturbance. Webb called the property management company. They confirmed that Unit 12 was leased to a Victor Okafor, Nigerian national, age 36. He'd rented the space 6 months prior, paid cash for a year up front, listed his business as import/export consulting. The name Michael Brennan meant nothing to them. Detective Rachel Morrison caught the case at 9:15 p.m., 23 years on the force, the last 8 in major crimes. She'd worked dozens of missing persons cases, most resolved within 24 hours. Misunderstandings, poor communication, voluntary disappearances. But something about this one felt different. Jennifer Hayes was a planner, responsible, communicated clearly. The fact that her phone was off was a red flag. Young people didn't turn off their phones, ever. Morrison assembled what they knew. Jennifer had gone to meet a client. The client used a false name. The business was fake. The website was fake. Someone had created an elaborate deception to lure Jennifer to an isolated location. This was not a miscommunication. This was a predator. By midnight, Morrison had assembled a task force. Detective James Kowalski from Cybercrimes, Sergeant David Chen from Patrol. They needed to move fast. The first 48 hours were critical. The forensic team arrived at Unit 12 at 1:30 a.m. The landlord provided keys. Morrison gave the order to breach the door. The space was empty, not abandoned, actively cleaned. The desk, the computer, the filing cabinets, the design books, all gone. The concrete floor had been recently mopped. The smell of bleach hung in the air. But Victor Okafor had made a mistake. In his haste to sanitize the space, he'd missed something. On the underside of the workbench against the far wall, the forensic team found it. A small smear of blood. The DNA analysis would take days. But Morrison already knew. This was Jennifer's blood. They were no longer searching for a missing woman. They were hunting an abductor. Detective Kowalski began tracing Victor Okafor's digital footprint. The Vision Path Solutions website had been created 3 weeks earlier using a domain privacy service. The hosting was paid for with a prepaid debit card. The email account Michael Brennan used was routed through multiple proxy servers. But criminals make mistakes. Always. Kowalski found it in the metadata of a design sample Okafor had sent Jennifer. A logo supposedly created by Vision Path for a previous client. The file had been edited on a computer with a specific machine ID. That machine ID appeared in Okafor's legitimate business records. His actual import/export business, documented with the state of Ohio. The IP address led to a residential address in Whitehall, a suburb northeast of Columbus. By 6:00 a.m. Wednesday morning, Morrison had a warrant. By 6:30 a.m., SWAT was assembling outside 2847 Maple Crest Drive. The house was a modest, single-family home in a working-class neighborhood. Victor Okafor lived there with his wife, Blessing, and their 3 young children. Neighbors would later describe him as quiet, polite, kept to himself. He left for work early, returned late. The family attended church on Sundays. A picture of suburban normalcy. SWAT breached the front door at 6:58 a.m. Officers found Blessing Okafor and the children in the kitchen, eating breakfast. She was confused, terrified, screaming in Igbo and broken English. The children cried. Victor Okafor was not in the house. Morrison questioned Blessing Okafor for 2 hours. Through a translator, Blessing explained that Victor had left the previous evening around 6:30 p.m. He'd said he had a shipment to inspect at the warehouse. He did this occasionally. Late-night inventory work. She hadn't questioned it. Morrison asked which warehouse. Blessing provided an address, 4521 Industrial Way, a facility Victor used for his legitimate import business. The task force was moving within minutes. The warehouse was in a desolate industrial area south of Columbus. The building was old, corrugated metal, surrounded by overgrown lots and abandoned structures. Victor Okafor's van was parked near the loading dock. Morrison approached with tactical support. She could see lights on inside the building, visible through gaps in the metal siding. She could hear something else too, a generator running. Morrison made the call. Breach now. No warning. No negotiation. If Jennifer Hayes was in that building, every second mattered. They went in at 8:34 a.m. Victor Okafor was in the main room of the warehouse, standing over a table covered with plastic sheeting. He turned when the officers burst through the door. His expression was not surprise or panic. It was resignation. He raised his hands. He said nothing. Behind him, Morrison saw it. A makeshift cell constructed from metal shelving units and chain-link fencing. Inside the cell, barely visible in the dim light, was Jennifer Hayes. She was alive. Barely. Jennifer was sitting on the concrete floor, her back against the chain link. Her hands were bound with zip ties. Her yellow backpack sat in the corner, its contents scattered. She was wearing the same clothes from the previous afternoon, now dirty and torn. Her face was bruised. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. She was shivering despite the October warmth. When she saw the officers, she didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just stared, as if unable to process that this was real. EMTs arrived within minutes. They cut the zip ties. They wrapped Jennifer in thermal blankets. They checked her vitals: dehydrated, hypothermic despite the temperature, multiple contusions, possible concussion. They loaded her into the ambulance. Morrison watched them drive away. Then she turned her attention to Victor Okafor. The interrogation lasted 9 hours. Victor Okafor said almost nothing. He invoked his right to an attorney within the first 5 minutes. He sat in silence while Morrison laid out the evidence: the fake website, the email trail, the blood in the garage, the DNA match, the cell in the warehouse, Jennifer's testimony. His attorney, a public defender named Thomas Richter, tried to negotiate. Okafor would tell them everything, every detail, every plan, every intention, in exchange for considerations in sentencing. Morrison's response was direct. Victor Okafor would tell them everything, regardless. The evidence was overwhelming. The only question was whether cooperation would be noted at sentencing. The choice was his. Okafor conferred with his attorney. Then he started talking. The story he told was chilling in its calculation. Victor Okafor had been planning this for months. He'd studied Jennifer's online presence, identified her financial desperation through her social media posts, crafted a deception specifically designed to exploit her circumstances. The fake company, the professional website, the carefully worded emails. Every detail was engineered to build trust. He'd rented the garage space specifically for the abduction. He'd cleaned out his legitimate warehouse to create a holding cell. He'd purchased restraints, supplies, tools. He'd researched surveillance cameras in the area, planned his route to avoid detection, prepared alibis. This was not an impulsive crime. This was premeditated kidnapping. Morrison asked the obvious question: what was his plan? What did he intend to do with Jennifer? Okafor's answer was simple. He was going to transport her out of state, sell her to a contact he'd made through his import/export business. Human trafficking. Jennifer Hayes was merchandise. The investigation didn't stop with Okafor's confession. Kowalski dove into his communications, his financial records, his travel history. What they found was worse than they'd feared. Victor Okafor had been attempting this for over a year. Jennifer Hayes was not his first target. She was his first success. The digital forensics team found a folder on Okafor's laptop. Inside were profiles of 11 young women, all ages 20 to 25, all recent college graduates, all struggling to find work, all living in Ohio. He'd contacted 7 of them with similar fake job opportunities. 5 had agreed to meet him, but something had spoiled each previous attempt. One woman had brought a friend to the meeting. Another had given the address to her boyfriend. A third had grown suspicious and canceled. Pure chance had protected them. Jennifer had come alone. Jennifer had trusted the deception completely. Jennifer had been vulnerable. Morrison contacted every woman in that folder. Every single one was shocked, horrified, grateful. They'd had no idea how close they'd come to abduction. The hunt was no longer for a single predator. It was for a network. Okafor's contact, the person he claimed was going to purchase Jennifer, turned out to be a fabrication. FBI investigators found no evidence of human trafficking connections, no communications with buyers, No financial transactions, suggesting trafficking activity. The truth was uglier and simpler. Victor Okafor's plan was incoherent, poorly thought through, the fantasy of an amateur predator who'd watched too many crime documentaries. He'd built an elaborate system to capture Jennifer, but had no realistic plan for what came next. This didn't make him less dangerous, it made him more so. A desperate man with no plan is unpredictable. Jennifer would later tell investigators what those 18 hours in the warehouse had been like. Okafor had provided no food, minimal water. He'd visited the warehouse twice, once immediately after the abduction, once late that night. He'd said little. He'd spent most of the time pacing, talking to himself in Igbo, clearly uncertain what to do next. Jennifer had been terrified that his uncertainty would lead to violence, that he would panic and eliminate the witness. She'd stayed quiet, compliant, hoping to stay alive long enough for someone to find her. Someone did. Victor Okafor was charged with aggravated kidnapping, attempted human trafficking, unlawful restraint, and multiple counts of attempted kidnapping for the other women he'd targeted. His trial began in March 2020. The defense attempted to argue diminished capacity. Okafor had immigrated to the United States 12 years prior. He'd struggled to establish his business. He'd faced discrimination, financial stress, cultural isolation. His attorney painted him as a desperate man who'd made catastrophic decisions. The prosecution acknowledged these hardships while emphasizing the calculated nature of the crimes. Assistant District Attorney Patricia Huang was direct in her closing argument. Hardship may explain desperation. It does not justify predation. Victor Okafor did not steal to feed his family. He built a system to kidnap and sell young women. That is not desperation. That is evil. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Victor Okafor was sentenced to 38 years in prison without possibility of parole for 30 years. His wife, Blessing, was not charged. Investigators found no evidence she knew of her husband's crimes. She divorced him within 6 months and returned to Nigeria with their children. Jennifer Hayes spent 3 weeks in the hospital recovering from her physical injuries. The psychological recovery would take much longer. She was diagnosed with severe PTSD, panic attacks, nightmares, hypervigilance. She couldn't sleep in the dark. She couldn't be in small enclosed spaces. She couldn't meet with potential clients without having a panic response. Her career as a freelance designer was effectively over. She couldn't function in the situations her work required. But Jennifer refused to let Okafor destroy her completely. With the support of her mother, her roommate, and a trauma therapist, she began rebuilding. She found work as a remote graphic designer for a company with understanding management. She moved back to Cincinnati to be closer to family. She began speaking publicly about her experience, advocating for better verification systems for freelance job postings. In 2021, Jennifer worked with Ohio legislators to pass the Digital Freelance Safety Act, requiring online job platforms to verify business identities before posting consultant or freelance opportunities. The law wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The warehouse at 4521 Industrial Way was demolished in 2020. The property remained vacant for 2 years. In 2022, the city of Columbus purchased the land and converted it into a community garden. A small plaque at the entrance reads, "In honor of survivors, may growth replace darkness." Jennifer Hayes visited the garden once, during its opening ceremony. She stood at the entrance for several minutes, reading the plaque, looking at the rows of vegetables and flowers where the warehouse had stood. She didn't go inside. She didn't need to. The yellow backpack Jennifer carried that day sits in an evidence locker at the Reynoldsburg Police Department. It will remain there for as long as Victor Okafor is incarcerated. When he dies, it will be returned to Jennifer. Those belong to her. They always have. Jennifer Hayes survived because a roommate paid attention, because an officer took a missing persons report seriously, because a detective moved fast, because forensic technicians found a single overlooked smear of blood, and because Jennifer herself refused to give up, even when every reason existed to despair. That's what matters most.